We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the June 16th, 2025 study session of the University City Council to order at 6 o'clock. Please note the subject matter for tonight is the annual operating budget. So with that, we will turn the program over to the city manager, Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, you should have in front of you a copy of the transfers. That document was passed out. We had received a question regarding that. I had shared with staff, my eyes aren't as young as they used to be. So we may need to increase the font size on that. So if you have trouble reading it, just let me know and we'll get you a larger copy. This budget was drafted with the priorities that you have established in mind, ranging from economic development through and including our employees. The screen before you shows a picture of the current organization chart. And you will notice that included in this chart, thanks to our city clerk, we've removed the Gallup Commission as well as the Human Relations Commission, but everything else that you see where it indicates the reporting relationship is accurate. One of the questions that we received was about the property tax rate. And so I would ask for our finance director, Keith Cole, to come forward and just to give you some insight into how that property tax rate is set. You may recall that each year, at least for the past 7 years, well, with the exception of 1 year, which was COVID, where you left it the same. But each of the other years, it's been a continuous reduction. We end up working with the county on that tax rate, but I wanted Keith to provide you with some additional insights to it. Mr. Cole?
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Honorable Mayor, members of council. With the property tax, there's the Hancock Amendment that kind of is in play with the property tax and with the max amount that revenue can that we can accrue. So, in discussions with the state auditor's office, so really on the property tax rates, it's calculated with the assessed valuation. So if there's an increase in the assessed valuation, then the property tax is going to get lowered. So then the city is going to levy the property tax on a lower tax rate. If the assessed valuations decrease, then the city will levy the property tax at a higher rate. But it also then gets based on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So I'm going to read you a little phrase that I received from the state auditor's office, and it kind of goes over what I just mentioned. So overall, if there's an increase in existing assessed valuation over the current year's Consumer Price Index, then the tax rate will be lowered, and you'll be levying a lower rate on the higher assessed valuation. If the existing assessed valuation were to decrease, then the tax rate would be increased and you would levy a higher rate on a lower assessed valuation. Then these adjustments then ensure that the district, the city, remains revenue neutral, only allowing for an increase in the revenue up to the CPI. And so our current FY26 property tax rate is based on a CPI rate of 2.9%. And then in 2024, the CPI rate was 3.4%. So for this proposed budget, we're anticipating a reduced property tax rate because our assessed valuations increased. So compared to 2024. So then we're going to be levying a lower rate because of the increased assessed valuations. So that's kind of where we're going to have a decrease in the property tax because one, we're only generate the revenue up to the CPI rate of 2.9% compared to what we used in 2024 of 3.4%. So that's kind of how the rationale of how the property tax rates are calculated. If you got questions, I'm happy to answer.
Mr. Fuller.
With June 30th coming up, and I've been asked this a bunch of times and I have no answer. First of all, I'm not a economist by any stretch of the imagination, but this tax freeze for senior citizens, how is that going to affect us as a city, do you think? I know it's hard to estimate at this point.
I would have to work with the county and see if I could come up with some kind of calculation to see if it would be affected by us. I mean, it's a difficult, I would think it'd be a difficult calculation because you'd have to get everybody who has applied for the freeze and then kind of work the county and see.
And it's been my estimate, it's been my discussion. A lot of the seniors are thinking that it's going to freeze the valuation on their homes. That's not happening. It's just affecting the rate.
Correct.
The evaluation of the evaluation goes on an annual basis.
Correct. The assessed valuation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could increase or decrease, but it's the actual tax rate.
That's correct. It's the rate that we're talking about. And then out of that rate, I mean, just a ballpark figure, how does that trickle down to our city?
Well, I mean, there's more that's so then like next year, if the assessed valuation is gonna, let's say decrease, then our property tax rate is going to increase. But then if they're frozen, then it's going to stay flat. And then it's going to then affect how much then we could base our.
And I didn't ask the question right. In other words, what percentage of the county tax rate trickles down to University City? Do we know?
Well, it'd be the 7%.
Okay.
On this.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, on this slide. Because that's what our property tax is, 7.47%.
Anyone else? Councilmember Brenner.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. I don't know if you're answering is he answering my question? Okay,
Yes.
so I want to, I understand the tax rate and the Hancock Amendment. What I was confused about was actually the last line on 17. It says there will be a slight decrease in the revenue within 2026. And because I thought the Hancock kind of held us neutral, I didn't understand why we would have a slight decrease in revenue.
Well, it's still based on the CPI rate.
Mm-hmm.
So this proposed budget, it's based on the CPI rates at 2.9%. So that's the max we can generate revenue. And in 2024, the CPI rate was 3.4%. So the max that we generated last year was at 3.4%.
Okay, the max increase we can generate, right?
The
Okay,
max increase, correct.
thank you.
And then the max overall is the CPI is at 5%. So we can't generate no more than 5%. And that's per state. That's the cap from the state. Yes. Hopefully that answer.
Thank you. We've gone back and forth with the county on that issue for 5 years at least, and that's the information that they provide to us. I'm not saying that I agree with it wholeheartedly, but I accept it. As you can see, the property tax rate makes up a very small percentage for University City as compared to what you will see some of the other revenue streams that we have. Next slide simply provides you with an example of what that distribution looks like in hard dollars to the state, to St. Louis County, to University City, as well as to the school district, which has a significant impact based upon the property tax rate. I want to just highlight some of the proposed expenditures in this budget, as well as kind of what is happening with the property tax rate. As I indicated, we are continuing to reduce that property tax rate. This budget proposes 1.5% cost of living adjustment. One of the issues that was briefly discussed has to do with the fact that we are not proposing a cost of living allowance that is consistent with the CPI index. That is because most of the employees receive a 5% merit increase each year, as well as we have a pretty generous healthcare benefit that all employees receive. So my recommendation is for the 1.5% COLA. This budget also reflects the additional revenues that we anticipate receiving from the build-out market at Olive Development. It proposes the resident satisfaction survey, a compensation study to ensure that we are competitive in the marketplace. That has not occurred for at least 5 years. It reflects the solid waste rate increases, and it eliminates what is some of your favorites, the yard waste sticker fee. If you look at all funds, this just gives you a very broad overview of what the revenues are expected to be, the expenditures, and then the ending fund balance. This next slide outlines the revenue sources based upon percentage. You'll see that property tax rate for all funds about 8.4%. Sales tax, which is why you continue to focus on diversifying the local economy here, is increasingly more and more of a percentage of the revenue stream that we receive. And then charges for services as well as gross receipt tax. This next slide simply is a pie chart of those revenues. You look at expenditures for general fund, which has the bulk of the employees, primarily public safety, has about 60% of all of the expenditures that we have come out of general fund. The next slide, this slide simply just shows you what that percentage distribution is. And this next slide, page 11, is just the pie chart graphic of that distribution. Highlights for general fund. This is the first year that we are proposing to fund the debt service at the full amount. And if you recall, the debt for the annex in Trinity is divided between three funds. One is general fund, the other is public safety. And the third one, can't remember, but it's located in here, so I'll come back to that. But it is three funds that we're actually, capital fund is the third one. The three funds that we're actually transferring the funds for the debt service for the annex in Trinity. The class and compensation study, as I indicated, has not been conducted for about 5 years, so we want to make sure that we're competitive in the marketplace. This also proposes a part-time / temp position for the assistant city clerk. One of the things that we are looking at doing is making access to all of our files easier. And we reached out, well, actually, a company reached out to us to pilot their program with the University City. In order to do that, we are going to need, or LaRite will need, someone that is dedicated primarily just to that project. So that's what is being proposed, whether that's a part-time position or whether that's a temporary position. The work, if you want to be a part of the pilot, then I'm recommending this part-time position. The other is the resident satisfaction survey. Every other year, the council has agreed to reaching out to the community to get a better understanding of what they think of the services that we provide. That's critical information because much of that drives my recommendation to you. Good example is from the past survey, we learned that there had not been enough focus on sidewalks. And so for the past 2 years, we provided a greater focus on sidewalk improvements. This establishes a 32% reserve. The reason for that, even though it is considered a high fund balance, in the past 5 years, you've had 3 natural disasters. One was COVID, the other was the historic flood, and then this latest one was a tornado, which we were very fortunate it had only a major impact on one of our subdivisions. But in order to ensure that you are prepared for these major disasters, that's the reason that I recommend a higher fund balance than what is required in your financial strategies. The revenue makeup for a general fund, as you can see, heavily reliant on sales and use tax. That is primarily direct cause of the Hancock Amendment. As many of you know, we are significantly restricted on our ability to increase property tax rates. So that's the reason that you've decided to pursue a greater reliance on sales tax and diversifying our local economy. This next slide simply provides you with the pie graphic of that revenue distribution. Well, this is a larger font for the transfers. And this gives you an overview of all of the funds that transfer into the general fund. And I will tell you that some of these funds are not transferring the amount that you otherwise could transfer, because a good example of that would be the solid waste fund right now is primarily transferring just to cover the cost of the loan. But also they are not transferring, or I'm not recommending that it transfers to fleet. You will see later on in this that fleet operations is totally transferred. The cost for that is paid for by the general fund. However, solid waste has probably a third of the vehicles that are in the city operation. But it's not at a financial state of where I feel comfortable in making that recommendation to you that it should make the transfer. So general fund is absorbing that currently. This next slide shows the funds that receive funding from the general fund. The third ward revitalization receives 108,000. Again, debt service, and this is the fleet internal service fund. This next just gives you a graphic of the expenditures out of the general fund based upon the various departments. If you look down at police and fire, you'll see that public safety makes up about 54% of all expenditures out of general fund. Coming up in third place is parks, recreation, and public area maintenance at 16.7%. This next slide is just a pie graphic of that. So general fund, a summary of it tells you that the revenues we're estimating at about 32 million, the expenditures about 34 million, with an $11 million dollar fund balance representing a 32% fund balance. Were there any questions on any of that I've gone over thus far?
If I could ask just a couple while you, when you talk about the 32% fund balance, which I think is good for us to understand the reason, but you're not suggesting that we change the requirement of 17%.
Mayor, that is correct.
It's just that's where we are and that's where you'd like to keep us.
That's correct.
Okay. And then secondly, since if you're just looking at the general fund, which to the general public is really the fund that most everybody pays attention to instead of all funds put together, if we are spending more than we are taking in, I think it would be important for us as we speak to the public for us to delineate that amount of money that's being spent over the revenues is really the money that's being spent on, for almost a good part of it is going to be is that for the CIPs or for the police station? I mean, I think it's important to make sure that folks understand that we planned to do this based upon issuing the CIPs for the police station. Am I correct in saying that?
There are two areas primarily. One has to do with the debt that we're covering for the police station, but that was anticipated. The other has to do more with fleet operations and general fund absorbing a lot of those costs. So much of this is tied together, and keep in mind that, for example, the stormwater, parks and stormwater fund, we're having really to save funds in that, which I'll get to and explain a little bit later, because of the retention basin project. So all of these are connected. That's why I say many of the funds are not transferring out the amount that they actually should have. But general fund is in such a strong financial position that you could transfer more out, but I'm not so sure that you should. for, again, that the fleet, it's still solid waste in particular is still struggling. You only recently increased the rates. The stormwater, you have a situation where you'll have a match of about $5 million. So you'll need to beef that fund up to meet that match in the future. And again, general fund is in a very good financial position.
Right, and I'll just conclude my remarks on that. I think it is important as we prepare to approve the budget that we communicate with the public that will spend a lot less time on this than any of us have to make sure that there's an understanding as to why the deficit spending is there and the rationalization behind it. That's all. So I'm hoping that we'll have a communication out from the city to our community prior to our vote that will explain a little bit more about what's going on. I believe that Councilmember Smotherson had his light on first.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Well, the first question that I wanted to ask, and then I'm going to have a couple of questions, but page 12, and I'm really trying to understand funds part-time assistant city clerk position, but I'm trying to understand why that's there, because again, the council hires, we have 2 employees, city clerk and city manager. And so why would this be part of this packet? Because this isn't coming from the city council. And so I don't understand why this is listed here like this. If the city clerk position is hired by the city council, why then is this part of this? If you can explain that.
Oh, absolutely. This is listed here because the council hires the city clerk, but any other employees that you approve for that division would be hired by the city clerk. And this is also the mechanism for budgeting those funds.
So the city clerk is requesting a part-time assistant.
Well, yeah, I think that there is certainly a need. The city clerk and I have had an opportunity to discuss this issue. There is an understanding that there's a need will exist if you decide to pilot this new software project. But if you decide, once you have this information about what the software will do for University City, and you decided against that, then yeah, probably this is something that could be taken away. I'm saying that I think that the software will enable all residents to access information within the city easier. It'll be outlined better, which will reduce some of the burden that is on the city clerk today. So I believe it's a good project. You may disagree with that ultimately, but if we don't budget it now, I mean, this is what we're going through the budgeting process. So that's why this is moving forward at this time.
So then how would the part-time assistant city clerk be hired? By the council?
No, you hire two people. One is the city manager, in the same way the council doesn't hire my staff. You would also not be in a position to hire unless that would be unusual for the council. I'll say that, to hire the assistant city clerk position.
No, I don't have a problem with, I'm just trying to understand that in that who hires that person. Because again, it's strictly under the city council. And so so who's hiring the assistant? The city clerk?
Right. That's who would hire that position.
Very interesting. Okay. Next question, and I'll figure that out later. Transfer to debt service from Annex Court. Is there, and this, I have this question for several points that you have. Is there a number to that? When you have transfer to debt service for Annex and Court, do you have a number for that amount?
I
For
do.
what that number is? And is that something that I can find in the budget book, or?
Absolutely.
It is.
Yes.
And so that would be the same case if I go back and say, for instance, if I'm going back to page 6, and it says reflects additional revenues to be received from the markets at Olive Development. So there is a number we're receiving that I can find in the budget book. Instead of giving me just a general statement, reflects additional, and again, this is on page 6, reflects additional revenues to be received from the markets at Olive Development. What's that number? And can that be found in the budget book?
Yes, but not broken out where it's just basically, markets at Olive. We also don't break out any of our revenue streams based upon a sole source. It's aggregated. But I can tell you that the difference in the major change that's happened within University City that impacts your revenues is the market at Olive, specifically Costco. That's the major change that has happened. So the reason for placing this as a highlight in the budget presentation is so that you are aware that as you're looking at the revenue stream, and that may change, let's say it's 3 or 4 or 5% difference, the bulk of that difference is going to be attributed to the market at Olive Development. You also have, in addition to that, Crescent Plumbing, but that's going to be on to a lesser degree than what the market at Olive Development will be.
Okay, and the last question I'll ask for right now is that if I'm going to page 16, which we just went over this, Third Ward Revitalization Fund, and you're stating that the general funds transfers out $108,000. Is that TIF money? Because why would specifically, is that a TIF allocation to the Third Ward?
You may
Fund.
recall that there were a couple of funding sources to the Third Ward Revitalization Fund. One has to do with the TIF, but the other has to do with general funds contribution. And that's because the mayor and council decided some time ago that the funds that we would ordinarily receive from the consolidated revenue that we get, you wanted those funds going to the Third Ward as well. So this is this is something that was budgeted in this fiscal year's budget, and is simply, I want to reflect that that's being included in, that's being recommended for next fiscal year as well.
I'll leave it at that for now. So thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Thank you for the presentation, City Manager Rose, thus
I've
far.
still got some more, but
Well, and I said thus far. Yeah,
Right.
I'm aware we are not even perhaps halfway through the journey. You spoke about a merit increase of 5% for employees. Is that, and you may have said it clearly, but I didn't catch all of it. Is that an up to amount?
well, for public safety, for example, they, in the ordinance that you approve for salaries, you create a step system. And so that step for police, fire, as well as for non-uniform employees, has, each step is about 5% difference. Now, that's not the case for the executive team. The executive team is a range where I can go from 0 to, I'd say within reason, 5%. So for public safety, for non-uniform, merit increases are typically based upon steps, and the difference in those steps is about 5%. For the executive team, it's a different structure.
Okay, and so clearly not everyone everyone does not get a merit increase, correct? It's based on performance, is that?
It's based on performance. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so when we look at a 1.5 across the board for everybody, Obviously, everyone gets that. And then there is the potential for a 5% merit, a step increase.
That's correct.
Is that the school district has a similar system? Does education and professional development also feed into that, or is it strictly based on performance? In the school system, if you get the next level of education, get a PhD or whatever, you can also increase that way. That is not the case for us.
For the majority of the employees, it is simply based on performance.
Okay,
Now,
that's-
for public safety, that operates a little different.
Okay.
Mhm.
One more of a comment. And this may be more appropriate for a work plan conversation, but when we think about revenue streams, I know there's been conversation, not in a formal sense, but about monetizing the transfer station.
That's correct.
And that as a kind of an unrealized potential. So I offer that as a comment again. I will, bring it up or perhaps in the context of the work plan. I think we have a session coming up, but that, as we look for additional revenue, that I think could be a fertile area to explore.
Just so that all of you are aware, and I believe I discussed this somewhat on the work plan discussion. We are looking at seeing if we can maximize the benefit that we can have with our transfer station. That may mean contracting with certain companies to perform their transfer. This is in its infancy stages, so we've only had maybe one discussion at this point about it. But it's a resource that is, in my mind, significantly underutilized. And we're trying to make some changes to that to benefit the residents.
To follow up with Councilmember Smotherson, the pilot program that you referenced is something that I think, unless my memory is faulty, most of us are hearing about relatively recently. If not, this is the first time we've heard about it. So I do think that unless this is just a placeholder, I think we'd all like to know more about the pilot program before we take the vote on the budget. And then the second thing I guess I would say is, if regardless of that, my thoughts are that I'm perfectly comfortable with the city clerk doing interviews and hiring. That part doesn't bother me at all. But I would tend to think this may be more of a temporary than a part-time. But again, that we're kind of getting into the weeds. But since none of us know anything about this pilot program, I think it would probably behoove all of us to have some information prior to the vote that is coming up.
Your pen would run out of ink. We'll make sure that we get that information to you. If there are no other questions, I'll press forward. Providing you with some of the highlights from the various departments. We're proposing to continue to fund ROARS and the calendar, the government affairs contract, the communication consultant, who Robin actually helps us quite a bit with the with ROARS. Also proposing to fund the automated parking service. And this is one of the services that we are recommending that will have an impact on the number of tickets that are issued and that are processed through our court system. Currently in our loop, for example, we have a very antiquated system in place where the majority of the time the parking meters don't work. And when they do, you have to scrape and find a quarter. to place in there. We're looking at automating that process. And in doing so, we will engage our police officers more. Once we have a system in place that we think works well, then we'll engage our police officers to ensure that those individuals that are parking are actually paying to park when it's appropriate to do so. This also proposes funding the resident satisfaction survey. This is out of the city manager's office. And I talked about the transfer to debt service. This is the division that makes that transfer to debt service. For the finance department, no major changes there. Proposing the annual audit, but we are not proposing any additional employees in that department. Municipal court, similar situation, maintaining the current level of service. You may recall that we anticipate the municipal court and the police department moving from their current location to the new facilities around March, April of 2026. So these budgets in some ways will reflect 9 months of them being at their current location. And that's, I'll highlight that more when we get to police.
And Mr. Rose, on the municipal court, is the head count in that division a court clerk and 2 associates, or what's the head count for?
It's
municipal court?
3 total,
3 total.
1 court clerk of the court, and then 2 assistants. The police department is the same situation. Again, they move around March, April. There was an issue regarding electricity that I'll talk about when we get to the amendments that I am proposing. But that is the reason that there is an oversight. Electricity should have been budgeted, but it should not be budgeted at the full year, should be budgeted at 9 months. And I'll talk about that when we get to the amendment section. The police department is proposing to go to a different duty weapon. So all of the weapons will need to be replaced in 2026. And if you don't mind, Chief Hampton, would you mind coming up and talking a little bit about that so that the council better understands why that is necessary?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. The necessary move of the replacement of duty weapons is because Beretta is no longer manufactured in the States in America. So we're having very bad customer service skills as well as reordering of supplies and equipment with Beretta because it's coming from overseas. And specifically, there's been several other departments that have had to navigate from the Beretta manufacturer. So we've looked at Smith & Wesson, we've looked at Glock, we've looked at Springfield Armory, of course, any of the others that are out there. And just an example, St. Louis County has recently navigated into a new duty weapon. St. Louis City is about to navigate into a new duty weapon. The situation with us will be a 9mm type of weapon, make and model, but specifically it would not be Beretta. And the other change in this is that the city will maintain ownership. City of University City will maintain ownership of the duty weapons to help keep a streamline of easy replacement, carrying, and repair. Question. Thank you.
I'd like to ask. a question.
Councilmember Teeman.
Will they continue to use the 9mm that's manufactured by Olin Winchester?
Say this one more time, sir.
Will they continue to use the 9mm manufactured by Olin Winchester?
Olin Winchester.
The,
We,
the bullet, will it continue to be the 9 millimeters?
yes, it still will be the 9 millimeter, with and the grain it kind of changes from the availability, but
Mhm.
ammunition wise, it's a market up and down that fluctuates as well.
And is this standard 9 millimeter used by both the city and various county?
County is navigating into a 9 millimeter. They navigated from a 40 caliber, but now they're into a 9 millimeter. St. Louis City is still with a 9 millimeter duty weapon as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And so just to be clear for Chief, I'm recommending both the guns and the bullets. That's a little inside joke there. Tough crowd. Okay. Also, we're continuing with the vehicle and equipment replacement for police.
What you skipped past on the staffing under police, it says maintain staffing, but I know that the budget says we have authorized 100. At some point in time, can you update us on what's the actual number? Because I think we recognize that staffing continues to be a challenge, but there may be 100 folks authorized, of which 66 are police officer, but how many do we actually have?
Absolutely. We are slated to have a planning session with you, I believe sometime in September. And so I would have Chief Hampton prepare a report for you that we could deliver in September, if that's acceptable to everyone. Chief? Okay. For fire, we're maintaining the current staffing levels. Within this proposed budget, we're simply purchasing some communication radios as well as some cabinets for them. Keep in mind that in this fiscal year,
Your slide doesn't match
Oh.
what you're.
must have gone too far. This one? No, I've got to go back.
I think you went the wrong way.
So Reed, I still taking you up on that offer, huh? For,
There you go. There you go.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. For the fire department, maintaining the current staffing levels, a couple of cabinets for them, communication radios. But keep in mind that in this fiscal year, you actually purchased a ladder truck for the fire department at a cost of about $1.8 million. And that was a result of the agreement that you reached with Subtex Development. For Public Works, proposing to continue to fund street maintenance program, curbs and sidewalk maintenance. Again, for curbs and sidewalks, the higher amount for that service is due to the information that we received from the resident survey. Also, proposing to fund the electric vehicle charging station. That's with the assumption that we actually receive the grant that has been approved at the federal level. And so we are still proposing the funding for the matching funds for this budget. I'm hesitant for that particular project only because it's unclear as to what monies we'll actually start receiving from the federal government because of shift in direction of priorities for them.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Brenner.
Just a follow-up question on that grant. Thank you, Mayor Crowe. So it was granted to us. Is it an allocated? Is it something or not? Like, what, did it go all the way through the approval process?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me
So,
turn around the brook here. Real quick. It's been approved. Is that?
Good evening.
uh-huh.
Yes, it went through the approval process. We were notified that we had been awarded the funds shortly before the new administration took office. And then we received notice that it might be rescinded. We were told to proceed for right now with the planning as though we will still get it, but it's up in the air. Federal Highway Administration is unsure at this time.
Just to follow up on that, is this something that legally, like, I know some place, it may not be worth pursuing, but some places that have been granted things and then they've been quote unquote rescinded have legally challenged that? Is that something that would be? Whoever, thank you.
That's a decision that the mayor and council would make an executive session, if and when we ever got to that point. Thank you.
Councilmember Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just what is our percentage on that? I forgot, I remember when we talked about this before. Once we get the grant, what will we stand for?
It's an 80-20 match, so we would receive 500,000, and I believe our match was like 130,000. So for a total project cost of $630,000.
Thank you.
For sanitation, proposing to fund semi tractor trailer replacement, as well as some improvements for the transfer station ramp. Under planning, maintaining the current staffing levels. It funds, proposes funding nuisance abatements. That is the board ups, primarily, as well as the takedowns from homes. But no major shifts for site planning and development, planning and zoning. Much of their focus next fiscal year will be on concluding the zoning changes, zoning code update. There we go. Parks and Recreation and Public Area Maintenance proposes to continue to fund the annual tree trimming program, as well as the tree replacement for Pershing and Ferguson. You may recall that both of those projects are moving forward. And we've had some challenges with them, but believe that they are back on track at this point. So proposing to fund those, the replacement cost. Also continuing with our dead and hazardous tree removal and funding for Heman Park Pool filter room improvements.
Councilmember Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. And you'll have to forgive me. Is area maintenance, is that a new term? And what exactly does it specify? What domains does it cover?
Yeah, public area maintenance is, you put that into the structure of the organization a couple of years ago. And that encompasses the street division. It encompasses park maintenance as well, and forestry. So all of those divisions are under this broader division, which is referred to as public area maintenance. So any of the public areas, we consolidated those things so that there's just one large division that has responsibility for all of our public areas. The maintenance of all of our public areas falls up under one division. We're proposing to continue funding with the tree replacement. This is the emerald ash borer. Also some improvements for the driving range construction. You may recall that we are looking at bringing on board an engineer to assist us with establishing a plan for the driving range. Also proposing the construction of number 1T and green. Any questions on any of the departments before I move on?
Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Thank you, Gregory, for Mr. Rose for the explanation of what we've got. I'm going back a little bit to the discussion that you were having with the mayor about some of the fleet maintenance and how it relates to solid waste. And so it looks like when you looked at the new transfer in and out, there's 1.5 million that is transferred out of fleet maintenance and then into the general fund.
Just the opposite. It transfers from general fund into fleet operations unless there was a typo with that.
Okay, yeah, because it's, so I'm, on this form, it has the totals for transfer out, internal service, fleet maintenance. And it's got 1.5 million, and then you go to transfers in general fund at the top. It has 1.5 in, and then if you go into the fire tab, if I can flip through these in any kind of speedy fashion, you look at that's where fleet management is housed underneath there.
That's correct.
And then they've got a budget expense on other operating transfer out of 1.5 million.
Yeah, we'll make sure that if there is a typo that we correct that. Fire department is up under, well, the fire department is up under general fund. So that part of it is accurate, where we are identifying the transfer that goes to the fleet fund out of fire, because that's who manages it. The issue though is if we have it on that smaller sheet that it's coming from fleet into general fund, that's incorrect.
Okay, so it should be coming from the general fund into fleet management, because then from there it gets dispersed to the different folks that would have fleets that we have to manage.
Right, yeah.
So they're kind of, that's how we cover the cost. And that's why then you shift that to, and that's why I wanted to make that clarification. That's why you shift that over to sanitation, who has a lot of fleet. And if they're not able to cover that as much until these rate increases kind of fill up their bucket, that's why we've got that downside on that.
That's it exactly. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
all right.
one of the issues. The other has to do with park vehicles. The fleet was just an example of where general fund is absorbing some of the costs. There are others that could be highlighted as well, but fleet is the big one.
And then I was looking at the parks and recreation. And the concern that I had there was some of it was with staffing. There was lists of camp director, assistant camp director, camp counselor, and we don't have anybody anticipated in that. And I know we're doing a pilot program this summer. Would we be anticipating those folks to get in there? Because I don't, and I'll dovetail that with also, I thought one of our goals was, as we rebounded from the flooding and COVID, that we wanted to direct our attention to especially recreation. And it doesn't look like there's dollar wise an increase in what we might need to have better recreation, to have those things fixed. It looks fairly steady. So those are kind of a broad issue of the same thing. If that was our goal, shouldn't we see that reflected in the budget?
That's accurate. One of the things that I first need to bring to you is a plan. And that's something that Deputy City Manager Brooke Sharp will work with the Parks Director on in developing that plan that can be provided to you. So what will we be doing in recreation? What will we be doing in programming at Centennial Commons, for example? So once we have that plan in place, we'll submit that information to you, and there may be other budget amendments. But the one that I was relatively certain about is the summer camp program, that would continue to operate next fiscal year. So that's why that one is identified and being recommended to you.
And then also, I just noted a couple of things that didn't look right, and I'm assuming they're typographical errors. Page 157, page 167, under Parks and Recreation, it looks like the dates might be wrong on some of those years where it's reflecting, one is performance summary, it might be the wrong year, and performance measurements go through 2024. They don't have 25 and then projected for 26.
Yeah.
Those could just be typos.
We'll make sure that we correct those typos when the final budget document is presented to you for
Thank you.
consideration. Other questions? Okay. Wanted to highlight some of the other funds for you to give you a sense of their financial position. Public safety, as you know, the bulk of this covers not just the expenditures from police and fire for operations, but also for pension. And that's one of the areas that you've authorized me to look at. And you recently approved a contract so that we can take a look to see how can we change the trajectory of the uniform pension plan. For capital improvement fund, it wouldn't be a bad thing to zero this out each year, but we're recommending roughly a $82,000 fund balance for it. For park and stormwater fund, you may recall this is the one where I will be recommending that we try to build this fund up so that we can cover the today $5 million in our match that will be required for the retention basin project. Still up under design with the Army Corps of Engineers, so we have some time. But fairly soon, we're going to need to resolve where we will take those funds from. EDRST fund has a very healthy fund balance. I don't know that it identifies yet the expenditures for next fiscal year. This has a board that assists you with providing recommendations on how you spend those funds. There could be one project that we are hoping to see advance here pretty soon that may have a significant impact to the amount that you have in fund balance here.
Councilmember Clay,
Thank you.
apologize for the delay.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thank you, Mayor Crowe. The Park and Stormwater Fund that we're looking to build up in anticipation of our match for the basin, are you looking to fund that match exclusively from the Park and Stormwater Fund, or is there a proportion that you're looking at?
It's a stormwater project, the retention basin. And so my recommendation to you will be funding it wholly, our match from Parks and Stormwater. So that was the decision that you as a council made probably more than 5 years ago at this point, to pursue that project.
Absolutely. I do recall that. So what you said it's in the, working with the Army Corps of Engineers and they're doing their, whatever it is that they do. What is our time horizon?
Can't be soon enough, but anytime you deal with the federal government, we're probably a couple of years out.
Okay.
Once they get the design completed, you've got to get the costs for construction into an appropriations bill, and that's not going to be easy.
So I guess I'm trying to do the math here. If we need to build that up to at minimum 5 million, I would assume over that to some degree to have some, maybe have some degree of fund balance for other needs. And if the time horizon is a couple of years,
How does that work?
yeah, what do we need to bank each year to to get to the 5 million in a couple?
Yeah, I
in
think
3 years?
you'll need to, if we're fortunate, we'll be in a position where, I would likely recommend a general fund providing the stormwater with a loan to cover that portion, similar to what
Okay.
we did for public safety,
Okay.
where you get paid back over a period of time. But more practical, it's going to take several years, I would suspect, in order to get that into an appropriations.
Okay.
bill. But
Now,
there's a plan.
so when I was talking about a proportion, because the math didn't seem to work out that we could build up to 5 million just based on the revenues from the park and stormwater in any sort of reasonable time. So there would be a general fund loan that
To
would,
cover the.
okay,
yeah.
got you.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Councilmember Brenner.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. So going back to Park and Stormwater Fund, right now, what you're listing though is that our expenditures are exceeding our revenues in that fund. So we won't be able to build anything this next year.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we will be able to. So though, I believe it's 1.5. Let me go back. Yeah, roughly 1.6 million that is being proposed. I would suspect that you won't see the same level of expenditures in FY 27 that you see in FY 26. So cause that window is closing, so more funds will be proposed to go into fund balance in 27 than what I'm proposing in 26.
Okay, I'm still a little confused though, because is the revenues and maybe I'm not able to read this right. So the revenues are 2.2, our expenditures are 2.3. But
There is some deficit that's being proposed for
For
this
next year.
fiscal year, right? I
That's-
guess it's roughly what, $100,000. But the reason I say that is because this is a fund that it wouldn't be bad to zero out each year if you didn't have all of the other upcoming expenditures. It's only because of those upcoming expenditures that I'm recommending that you don't do that. You continue to have a healthy fund balance, and that in addition, you start saving for that. And keep in mind also that we're pretty conservative in how we budget. A good example is for 24, we budgeted, I believe, a 36% fund balance for the general fund, and the audit came back at 41%. But I would rather have you pleasantly surprised than for us to go over. The fire service fund is one that we created in this fiscal year's budget. It was more of a legal requirement. Fire service covers much of the fire operation expenditures. So that one is zeroed out each year. For the third ward fund, it gives you an indication of what the aggregate revenues are. shows a very high fund balance. This, keep in mind, does not show expenditures, so it does not reflect the position expenses that are associated with that position yet. That came after the budget was proposed. So that will be a proposed amendment that I will highlight in just a couple of minutes. Sewer lateral continues to be a healthy fund for you. This is the first year again of funding all of the expenditures for the debt service. We're leaving a small fund balance there. That reduces the burden that you'll have next year a little bit. But even if that were zero, that would be okay too. For the amendments, I will be recommending to you to increase the Starlight Concert Series budget by $5,000. This was an item that was raised last year that we should have placed in this fiscal year's proposed budget. So we'll make that correction. Also, the third ward revitalization position, we'll be recommending that we fund that from the third ward fund. This is an issue that came up regarding the electric leaf blower. That was a typo, should have been 200, so we're recommending the reduction of 1,800. Electricity is one that I had mentioned earlier. This should be budgeted, should have been budgeted at 9 months. So I'll be recommending $20,000 for that. We'll cover those costs though with a reduction in overtime, and that's just simply based upon how overtime is trending this fiscal year. Looking at things that are on the horizon, then anticipate the completion of the renovation projects, but where the project's construction will be completed, you'll have the debt service for some time. The retention basin I've spoken with is to be a total of $14 million, $5 million will be our local share. Still trying to resolve the issue with the uniform pension system. And I will be recommending a 1% cost of living adjustment for non-uniform.
Councilmember Teeman.
I hate to go back, but just to be absolutely clear, the increase in the Starlight Concert Series budget for $5,000, that is a permanent increase because of inflation, right? Not just a one-time?
Mayor, Councilmember Teeman, the intention will be for that to be a permanent increase. That's correct. I'd be happy to respond to any questions that you have.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Under your amendments, add third ward revitalization position under third ward fund, and I have a question about that. In that, the third ward fund is not something that's it's only gonna last until we get that $10 million. And with the addition of Target and Dearborg's, probably maybe in 26. Say, for instance, if in 15 years we get that $10 million, is this position temporary based on that? Because we're going to take those funds and as we move along each year, we're expending those funds to whatever we've approved as a council. But my point about this, so I don't understand is this position based on the existence of that fund and then the extinction of that fund? So does that mean that that position is done with when that fund is over?
Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, no, the position will continue. Included in the plan was a recommendation that the third ward fund cover the cost of that. I want to say for about 5 years, and then that position switches over to general fund
After 5 years.
after 5 years.
Okay.
I can't, I believe it's 5 years. I'm certain that, it is in the plan that says it will absorb it for a period, 3 to 5 years. So, yeah.
Okay. And then just so that I get some other clarification on some things. And I am going to have to go back and, let me make sure I got what I want. Under city manager's offices, and, this is page 21.
Mhm.
Can you clarify funds, roars, and city calendar? Who's in charge of that? And what's the distinction or the difference between funds communication consultant?
The communication consultant is Robin. But who is in charge of Roars and the calendar is our communications manager,
And that is
Jared.
Jared. So Jared is in charge of roars and city calendar.
That's correct.
And Robin is. Okay, and then my last question about that page is why under your department is funds resident satisfaction survey when we weren't doing that under the general fund? And I'm trying to understand if that's why that's repeated under your office. But go ahead, I'll let you answer that question.
The division that will be responsible for execution of the survey is the city manager's office, specifically the deputy city manager over support services, which that position falls up under the city manager's office. So that's why it was recommended that it be budgeted up under the city manager's office, which falls up under the general fund.
Okay, all right. So that's the same as transfers funding under Annex and Trinity Department.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Councilmember McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Just a couple of quick questions. With, where am I at here? Public Works, Administration and Engineering, they show a 32% decrease in the contribution to the pension fund, the non-uniformed. And given that we've had increases to benefits in there, and I think they're adding employees in that area, how can there be a 32% decrease in the pension funding?
Yeah, Public Works, we're not proposing to add additional employees, but I'll have Finance Director Keith Cole come forward regarding the reduction for that. But normally what we do is we look at the amount that has been budgeted for the fiscal year that we're in and track it back a couple of years to see, were we on target, were we off, or do we need to make some changes? Mr. Cole? And there's several other questions that I'm going to get to as well that I received via email. This has to do with the outlet, with the contribution. This is for pension for public works.
Councilmember McMahon, could you repeat the question? What page?
Yeah,
is
I'm
it
on page 118 of the budget book, and it just caught my eye that there was a 32% decrease in the pension contribution for non-uniformed public works in the administration and engineering program. And it just seemed odd to me. The number of employees stays the same. It was 10,000 last year, but now it's dropping down to just under 7,000. But it just, if we're wanting to, it just seemed as an anomaly to other. If you look at the other departments, they all have either increases or they stay the same, but there was a 32% decrease.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to look at my detail.
I mean, it could just be a calculation error.
Right,
so
but
just-
I know it's a percentage of the personnel in that department, and then it's allocated between all the departments, the number of employees. So Yeah, I mean, I can get back with you for that calculation.
Oh, that's fine. And I had two other quick questions that I usually ask during budget questions. Do we have an easy way to know how many miles of streets or feet of sidewalk we anticipate repairing in the next fiscal year? So we can tell our residents a nice hard number that we hope to accomplish. And lastly, we have a number of officers that we allocate in the budget. Can we get a good solid number of how many we actually have on staff? And those can be done later. We don't have to do it now. I know you got a lot of other questions.
For the officer allocation, Chief Hampton will be preparing this report for your planning session in September. We should be ready with our report regarding the sidewalks that we intend to improve as well as the streets. So I'm going to turn around and look at Brooke and Marilla for a second to make sure that September is a good time frame for that. Okay. I'm told yes. So we'll have both of those reports ready for you in September. We'll present that information.
I just have a few questions and these can be answered either this evening or if someone can just get back to me. On page 55 under General Administration, Human Resources, we have a 180% increase in commodities. And that's kind of a curious one to have 180% in commodities within particularly that area. So I'm just wondering what that may mean. The next one would be, let's see, this is under police operations, pension contribution, non-uniform with a 28% increase. Just curious as to that increase. That is on page 93.
Okay. We'll write down the question if this
Right.
is acceptable to you and then
Correct.
Respond back
And
to
then
you.
I think, Mr. Rose, on page 98, which is under the fire department, when we have a capital expenditure for 2026 of 1.55 million, is that the, is
That
that,
sounds
is
like
that the truck we
the,
just, is that what we just got? Or is that,
is it proposed
it's
in,
just such a large number. The 1.550 million capital outlay under the fire department.
that sounds like fleet, the transfer out to fleet operations.
That's the
But
truck?
Well-
That's your number. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. That made that one easy. Thank you. And then on page 119, and this is just the accountant in me coming out, under Public Works Administration Engineering, we have 10% of their budget, one item being other. And I just think that anytime you have 10% of an item being other, I think
what's
the
that?
rule of thumb is that somebody needs to tell us what the other is. And this other is $485,391. So it'd be kind of good to know what the other is. And then finally, probably for the folks who are watching at home, I know we do have folks watching at home. When you go back to page 177, where we have zeroed out the library budget, can you just walk through that for folks?
Absolutely. The library department is overseen by its own board. And so they approve the budget. So this year, I believe that is going to occur sometime in June. But in talking with the director, it was their decision not to include it for this year in the overall budget and to extract that out and just let the library board approve it.
That's a protocol that you are comfortable with.
I believe that it's important for the mayor and council to see the full budget. Because ultimately you have responsibility for the entire budget. So I'm sure that Finance Director Keith Cole will work with Patrick to get at least a draft or what has been approved by the library board to you so that you can see that budget that was approved by the board, along with all of the other budgets that are being proposed.
Thank you. I think you're now up to the email questions if you would like. I don't think there's any other lights on.
I had a question regarding the bond rating. Our bond rating is AA+, and this was increased in 2024 as a result of the review that occurred before we could do the bonds for the Annex and Trinity building. There's a question about what services are contracted out, basically. Leaf collection is contracted, tree removal is contracted. A portion of vehicle maintenance for the fire vehicles, large fire trucks in particular, I believe we contract that out. And some of our mowing is contracted out. It's contracted. I believe I responded to the question regarding the clerk. Some of the issues regarding IT, it shows an 81% drop. That's because we wanted to better identify the operating costs for each department. It had been centralized, their IT needs up under one department, and I'm proposing to decentralize that so you have a better understanding of the cost of each particular operation. Number 5, why are the tickets? And that has to do with the new system that is being proposed, the new parking system. Page 90, the 45% increase, that's related to new furniture, fixtures, and equipment that's associated with the annex and renovation projects. This is number 6, what accounts for the 45% increase in commodities on page 90. We addressed the issue of electricity. There's a question regarding the victim advocate position that had historically been budgeted. There was a typo there that we will end up correcting, but I do want to give you some insight into what occurred with that position. It dates back probably 4 or 5 years where the responsibilities were absorbed by other positions, and that is because the grant had gone away. But Chief Hampton, if you could come forward and give some insight into the old victim advocate position.
Good evening. The victim advocate position is actually absorbed within our crime analyst / grant coordinator. That's Miss Ashley Tate as we speak, but we do take a very proactive approach with that, utilizing police chaplains, utilizing other personnel that we can entertain at any victim's needs, whether we're talking single victims or we're talking family. One examples are example of a house fire that left a large family homeless, clothesless, and without many items. And this was something that while St. Louis County and some of the state funds have dried up, we had large donations given by police personnel. We reached out to collaborative groups through that particular position, but that victim advocacy is something that is still being approached almost as a group concept for the police department.
Just a couple of other questions. One is related to WashU. Do they pay into the University City Loop Special Business District for its buildings? The Loop Special Business District is funded based upon business license as well as property taxes. And for WashU, unless it is a building that is associated with some sort of educational operation, normally they keep those other buildings on the tax rolls, so they do pay property tax. And they also rent out those buildings, so the people that are leasing those buildings from them are required to get a business license. So there is some contribution from that end.
Do we know, Mr. Rhodes, just again, the age thing is probably coming up with my time on the council. We've had times in the past when we've had to remind WashU to make those payments to the county. Is someone monitoring that I'm not sure, it may just be a little bit of nomenclature here, but I'm not sure that they keep them on the property tax rolls. I think they've made payments to without just voluntarily, but as I recall at a time when someone else was sitting on this council, they needed to remind WashU that their payment hadn't been received yet. So I'm just curious, sort of if someone really is following up that they are making those payments.
I would imagine that our finance director, Keith Cole, is writing that down and will ensure that those payments are made.
Keith is probably saying, this is a long meeting tonight.
And then the final question had to do with funding source for the fire communication radios and kitchen cabinets, and that's proposed out of a capital improvement tax.
Are
If
there any
there are
other-
any questions that I miss, Councilmember Brenner, please just see me and happy to respond to them.
To all of my colleagues, I believe the vote on the budget is scheduled for next Monday. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
So if you have questions, please get them to the city manager and staff between now and then. I do appreciate the level of detail that all of you put in to ask the questions of the city manager, and to the city manager and all the directors and staff that are here. Thank you very much for the time you put in on this budget. If there's nothing else to come before the body, I would welcome a motion to go into closed session according to Missouri Revised Statute 610.021, legal actions, causes of action, litigation involving a public governmental body, and any confidential privileged communication between that governmental body or its representatives or attorneys. And 16.021, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting particular employees by a public governmental body where personal information about the employee is discussed or recorded. Is there such a motion? Motion made by Councilmember Teeman, seconded by Mr. Fuller. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Teeman,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon.
Aye.
Councilmember Brenner,
Aye.
Councilmember Fuller,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson, Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. Thank you very much this evening. And we will not need any staff probably at the exec session. Okay, got it. So everyone, can we take about a 5-minute break? And we will reconvene.